We are here to listen about the Columbia County Sanctuary Movement, which organizes with immigrants and allies to collectively support, empower, and defend our communities. El Movimiento Santuario del Condado de Colombia organiza con inmigrantes y aliados para apoyar, empoderar y defender collectivamente nuestras comunidades. Everything I hear from the Columbia County Sanctuary, they always repeat it in Spanish. So it's been a long time since I took Spanish, so I hope that's okay. We are also going to be hearing from Ted Hartman, who is going to be speaking on work he's done. So he's going to be speaking for a little while after these ladies are done. And thank you both. Haley Powers is a Bethlehem graduate. She lives in Glenmont. She's a resettlement and co-volunteer coordinator at Columbia County Sanctuary Movement since 2024. And Haley Powers. And Rio Rivera Arbogast is a longtime volunteer with CCSM and a resident of the Capital District. I'll just let them tell you more of what they are doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. You're welcome. Can you all hear me okay without the mic, or would you prefer I use the mic? Okay, I can use the mic. That's no problem. So Rio and I are here today to just give some updates about what we're seeing in the Capital Region, the Hudson Valley, when it comes to immigration enforcement, and then also to talk about the ways that you can get involved. CCSM is just one of many, many organizations up here that is doing the work to protect our immigrant neighbors. So there's lots of ways to get involved.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming out tonight. Good to see you all. My name is Rio, as mentioned earlier, and I just want to do a little shout out before we start. Okay, so I grew up in Greenwich. I don't know if anyone knows where that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys know. But, my father was a mail carrier in Bethlehem, in Glenmont, when I was growing up. So I just want to give my own personal little shout out to Glenmont while we're here in the library. Thank you.
Fun fact, he was actually my mailman, because I live in Glenmont. So. So as Mary said, CCSM organizes with immigrants, migrants, and allies to collectively support, empower, and defend our communities. We do that in a wide range of ways. We have some core services, which means direct services to people who are directly impacted by the immigration system. We do accompaniment support, so we have volunteers who help drive some of our community members from Columbia or Greene County, sometimes even Northern Dutchess, all the way up to the ICE office in Malta, because that's the closest ICE office, and unfortunately a lot of folks have difficulty with transportation. So that's one of the services we provide. We also help people get to the USCIS office, which is U.S. Customs and Immigration Services. That's in Colony, so clearly very inaccessible to anywhere that's not the Albany area. So we help people get there. We also sometimes provide interpretation support. We do have some limited legal services. Both of our DOJ reps went back to school, which is very exciting. But we're starting to build a legal committee so that we can expand and improve upon those services. Because in fact, legal services is probably the #1 need in this area. I would say also maybe across the country. There's not enough immigration lawyers to help everybody, and that's really the only way people win their case. So we are hoping to expand on that. We do have multiple mutual aid opportunities for people who are directly impacted by the immigration system. So those go to help people pay for rent sometimes, for their lawyer fees, for housing related items that they need, those sorts of things. We do also run a food justice program, which you can see here. That's JJ. He is a member of our food justice team. They will pack grocery boxes, which with donations they get from the food bank that's up here, Northeast Regional Food Bank. They also cook hot meals, so they'll deliver them out to community members who are unable or too afraid to leave their house for groceries. And we do a lot of bilingual informational programming. That's my area. My primary job is to run informational workshops for both allies and people who are directly impacted by the community. We've got a lot of trainings coming up for allies. We've got a training on how to identify immigration enforcement and how to use our hotline specifically, but it is good to know if you have other hotlines locally. So if you're interested in that, please come see me afterwards. I'm happy to give you the information. We also have a bunch of protocol training, so it's how to prepare yourself in the event that law enforcement comes to your place of business, your religious community, so where they focus on businesses, nonprofits, farms, and then communities of faith. So we'll do them for farms or mosques or, not farms, churches, mosques, whichever, community of faith you are. So that's a bit about us. There we go. And I will pass it to Ria.
All right, thank you, Haley. All right, everyone, so I'm going to take a few moments to talk about what we're seeing nationwide, especially with the new administration, different trends that have been popping up over the past year or so. So we have a slide here of our key issues and trends, so I'll just go through them a little bit. So as I'm sure no one in here is surprised by, unfortunately, we're seeing a huge surge in ICE raids nationwide. That is definitely reflected in our region as well, unfortunately. And, going off of that, we definitely have confirmed activity in New York. Definitely in the city, but also sadly around the capital region. Albany, Troy, Schenectady, I would say, are often the hardest hit, but we are seeing it as well in surrounding areas, in smaller towns, and as Haley mentioned, further south as well, where obviously, the concentrations of people are less, but they're still present. In terms of, impact on community, definitely it has understandably provoked many feelings of fear and vulnerability within the immigrant community and immigrant communities. And we're seeing that tangibly in terms of children missing school sometimes, staying home because it feels safer, than going to school or being picked up from school by a parent, parents avoiding work, especially if they've had a loved one who has been detained, but in general, it can come up for people, and as well as families fearing public spaces, especially with the legislation that was shifted this past year, where sensitive spaces such as hospitals, schools, and churches are no longer off bounds, let's say, as they were in the previous administration. We're seeing people feel more scared to be just in public sometimes, especially given the nature of how ICE is, sometimes just randomly, harassing people. All right, so we made a slide also about, diving in a little bit more about what we're seeing locally here in our area. So again, an increase of agents locally, due to all the increased funding that ICE and DHS has been given over these past few months. In terms of detentions, some of the detentions that we're seeing the most trend-wise would be traffic stops. Oftentimes we're seeing people stopped on their way to work in the morning. We're seeing, ICE kind of scoping out people's homes sometimes as well and following them on their way to work, and then detaining them, or if they are driving with some coworkers or friends, multiple people being detained. Sadly, also ICE check-ins, as Haley was mentioning, we have an ICE office in Malta near Saratoga, in Boston Spa area, if you're not familiar. And so, typically people, if they are in some kind of process of seeking status, they'll have ICE check-ins. Historically, people go to ICE check-ins, do their check-in and come home. But sadly, what we're seeing more now is when people go to these ICE check-ins that were once very routine, oftentimes people are being detained at their ICE check-in, even if they're in a legal process to, achieve some kind of status, Door-to-door canvassing. Haley, could you just share a little more of that? Oh, okay, yeah. So, okay, thank you. Yeah. Haley's going to take us last.
So this is, I think, one of actually the first examples we saw in the area. This was back when CRSC was first starting. We got a report, they got a report, of a kind of like a seatbelt checkpoint from the bridge going from Cohoes into Troy, I believe it was. Yeah, and somebody reported that ICE actually was participating in the seatbelt check because Rensselaer is a county that has a 287G agreement, which, for anyone who doesn't know, allows them to act as immigration officers. So they often collaborate with ICE. So in addition to stopping people as they were crossing the bridge, they were also going door to door, I believe, and knocking and trying to see who would answer. And I think their excuse was child welfare checks at the time, but yeah. So that's just the example of the door-to-door canvassing. But some folks nationwide have reported that too. ICE agents pretending to be checking meters and things like that. So yeah, we're not out of the realm of possibilities there.
All right, thank you, Haley. All right, you guys, the last piece we have here on the slide is related to some numbers we're seeing. So these numbers have been collected by the Capital Region Sanctuary Coalition, also known as CRSC, and that is, much like CCSM, is very local to Greene and Columbia County, counties. CRSC is our organization that's more based in our area. So Albany, Troy, Schenectady, and all the surrounding towns in the Capital District. So they have tracked over 600 detentions since last year in our area. And these are only the detentions that the org is aware of. There's likely a higher number than this, unfortunately. But at least it gives us some semblance of understanding the magnitude of ICE presence in the area.
So now we're going to kind of jump into how to get involved because we have to be able to work as a community to stop the detentions, and there's lots of ways to do it, but we're only going to be able to make it through this administration if we do it together, because this is hard work, not just for us who are already doing it, but for all of our volunteers who are starting to get involved. It's a lot, and it's going to make everybody exhausted. So the more people we have to participate, strengthen numbers. So the first way is to support immigrant-friendly legislation. There's lots of legislation that is moving through different areas. There's a lot happening at the state level. There's, of course, some happening at the federal level, and even some locally in your own towns and cities. So one of the things that CCSM does and a lot, we have our own small department that focuses entirely on this, is going to the Capitol. They go, I think it's almost every Tuesday. They were there today. They go and they talk to all of the local assembly people about specific legislation and try to get them to support legislation that has been introduced by their fellow assembly people. So two of the big ones that they're trying to get passed now, New York for All is the biggest one at the moment. This would make it so that local police, state police are no longer able to collaborate with ICE. It would essentially get rid of or make, I don't know if illegal is the right term, but 287G agreements, which are the agreements I mentioned earlier that Rensselaer County has. Rensselaer County, I believe, was the first county in New York State to have one of these, and they have been popping up more and more over the last year. I think we're up to 17. I think it's pretty high. Quite locally, I think localized down in like Long Island area and then some smattering up here. But that's New York for All, and then Care for If is representation for all, so folks aren't automatically guaranteed representation as they move through the immigration system. This unfortunately extends to children who have to represent themselves in immigration court, which is absurd. There's legislation for New York State to try to make it so that anybody who goes through immigration processes here, at least in New York State, will get representation. And so there's, if you follow our Instagram or our Facebook, I think also sometimes we send out like mass texts or emails about it. They're always looking for folks to come and stand with them. They'll do like a press conference at the $1 Million Staircase, and then they break off into groups and go talk to different legislators. They do this in collaboration with many other nonprofits. There's a ton of them that at the moment aren't at the top of my head, but if you are interested, I can send you some more information or direct you to somebody who is way more knowledgeable about this than me. But in addition to these immigrant specific legislation, there's other legislation that moves through statewide, nationally, and locally that helps to improve the lives of not just our immigrant neighbors, but ourselves as well. So locally in Columbia and Greene County, I think they were working these last few years to pass no-cause eviction. I always get confused if it's no cause or good cause. But so there's a lot of other types of legislation that benefit our immigrant community members beyond just what you see that says, like, for immigrants or refugees, across the board. So feel free to come and talk to me afterwards if you're interested in hearing more about this.
All right, folks, so we have a slide here about Know Your Rights training. Has anyone been to a Know Your Rights in this room before? Okay, we've got a couple people. Awesome. Thank you for making the time. So luckily, they are happening often, so if you haven't been to one yet, there are definitely opportunities. So basically, a Know Your Rights training, it's a training that explains, how immigration enforcement operates, and then what are your rights, how can you protect your rights, how can you speak your rights a lot if they're being violated. Also this way, so if your rights are being violated, they're being violated, which is really important. Yeah, very helpful, and there's also really helpful in terms of also, being able to share information with other people. If you take a Know Your Rights training, there might be information that you have that you could share with someone who hasn't maybe yet, or you can point them to a Know Your Rights training. So it's useful in that way too. So yeah, we definitely recommend attending one when you're able to. And there are many organizations, as Haley mentioned, in the area that offer them. We have a list of them up here. This is a list of some local immigrant rights nonprofits and groups. So we have RISE, Refugee and Immigrant Support Services of Emmaus. I'm not sure if I'm saying that. Emmaus, thank you. I wasn't sure that was right. Emmaus, got it now. They're based in Albany. CRSC, as we mentioned earlier, Capital Region Sanctuary Coalition, they also do Know Your Rights trainings that are very useful, and they're based throughout the Capital Region, and sometimes they'll do some online, which they'll post on their Instagram or Facebook. We also have USCRI, the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. They do Know Your Rights. NYIC, New York Immigration Coalition, CCSM, as you all know about, since we're presenting for CCSM today, and also CDBW, Capital District Border Watch. So I know it's a bit of a list, but those are all orgs that do this kind of work here in the greater region. And you can always reach out to them. Oh, I'm interested in Know Your Rights, and they'll let you know when their next one is, or maybe they can refer you to another org that's offering one soon. And they are offered online sometimes as well. If getting to a Know Your Rights in person is a little difficult, there are ways to get trained up online too.
I just wanted to mention something. So a lot of these organizations have these things called red cards, which a very small card you can hand out to people, to know your rights.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I unfortunately didn't have any with me today, but a lot of them will have red cards. They have them in many different languages. Ours are strictly in Spanish, and they have our hotline number on them, but NYIC has them in a ton of different languages, and it's very helpful for people to carry around. A lot of folks keep them in their wallet because they're really great at just fitting in your wallet. So I think a lot of times when some of these groups will host a Know Your Rights training, they'll also have these Know Your Rights cards that you can pick up. And I think somewhere up here, and I can't remember where, I can try to find out where, somebody has put like a whole bunch of them in like one of those little free book places, and you can just take them and they're available. I can try to find where that is because I can't remember. But another thing that we do at a lot of our in-person trainings, do you put it in yours?
I have a few whistle kits in my little free library.
Laura has some whistle kits in her free library if you need a whistle. One of the ways, and mostly in the city I think it is, that people are helping to alert people to the presence of ICE is using a whistle. It's helpful when it's very local, not as like super spread out, but we still use them up here, I believe. Something that we give out at our protocol trainings is what we call a warrant packet. So we've put together kind of like a PDF of different warrants so that you're able to identify what an actual legal judicial warrant is opposed to what is commonly known as an ICE warrant. So that is very helpful for folks as well. Again, before I change the slide, just noting that we have an online training coming up next Monday, I believe, the 16th, I think, on how to identify different agencies involved locally in immigration enforcement and how to report it. So if that's something that you're interested in, I can send you the information about that. And then we have a ton of protocol trainings coming up, which have a Know Your Rights component to them. So we're always doing these sorts of things. NYIC is a great resource. They've got lots of things on their website, including information about organizing days at the Capitol, so they're really great as well. Join your local rapid response network. They're all over the place and they're continuing to pop up quite a bit. They look a little bit different depending on which group it is, but we've got CRSC up here, as Rio mentioned. We are largely the primary rapid response group down in Columbia and Greene County, a little bit as well Northern Dutchess. There's the Saratoga Immigration Coalition, which has, I can't remember, is that just their rapid response network up? Yeah. So Saratoga Immigration Coalition has a network. There's Ulster. There's one in Newburgh. There's one out there. I think there's actually potentially two out in the Berkshires. So there's lots and lots of different groups to get involved with, and like I said, there's always groups popping up. We've got 2 that popped up at the beginning of last year down in Dutchess, who we as CCSM have been training. We do a lot of trainings on rapid response, how to build a rapid response network. We had a hand in growing the one up here in the capital region. Most of them are on social media. I know not everybody uses social media, but it has proven to be, for the most part, the fastest way to get information out to people who are directly impacted by these raids. So what will happen is, like when there is a raid confirmed, we'll post information about it on social media, and then other groups, even if they're not immigration groups, will repost it. So that way people are getting notices about raids happening all across Capital Region and the Hudson Valley. So if you're interested in knowing when a raid happens, I would recommend following any of these on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I don't think we tweet. I don't know if Twitter is still a thing, but we don't tweet, to my knowledge. But yeah, that's the best way to keep up to date on immigration enforcement action happening locally. And I would stress that if you see somebody posting information about a raid and it is not one of these organizations, before reposting, please check with any of these nonprofits, even the ones that were on the other slide, because sometimes people will be a little too fast on posting if they've seen ICE in the area and it turns out that it's not actually true, and that spreads a lot of panic within the community. So we're trying to really cut down on misinformation and directing people to any of the immigration nonprofits, any of the immigration groups, even some of the local nonprofits and groups that aren't immigration related. I think I've seen JVP send out things. Like, we're all, again, as I said, connected in this together, fighting for the same cause. So this is just like a quick rundown of our rapid response down in Columbia County and Greene County. And I'm going to emphasize that this is what ours looks like, but CRSC looks different. And depending on where you are, your rapid response might look different. So we have a team that goes out to verify when we get reports sent in to us, to our hotline. And then we have a different team that will come out if the report is verified. So this is when there is ICE in the area, there is an active raid going on. We will send out people to de-escalate the situation and try to have what they call like a meaningful intervention and stop the detention from happening. We also, I don't think actually anymore, but before this administration, we would have a forward team. So if we had high-risk individuals who were at risk of being taken at some point to and from the journey to Malta or home, we would send an extra rapid response team with the driver and the member. So just in case they got pulled over, they would have support there immediately. We also have our rapid response team act as marshals for when we do events. We have lots and lots of events for our community members because despite the fact that everything's kind of a bin fire right now, we still try to find joy, and we still try to find time and space to celebrate our community and our music and our culture. So we have a lot of events. Sometimes we'll have protests, and we look for people to be marshals to try to, again, de-escalate if something happens, or to let people know if ICE suddenly appears in the area. And then our rapid response team also supports families that have been detained or have people that have been detained in their family. So it's like an after detention support, helping find people in the immigration system, because often when they're detained, they'll kind of just get lost in the system and people then don't know where their family members are. We help people to put money on their commissary so that they can actually make phone calls to their family members. We try to help people connect with lawyers. So there's a lot that goes on in the post-detention support. Do you want to talk about CRC? No? Yeah, CRC is pretty similar work. They just kind of group it a little bit differently, and there's different names for things. Definitely check out their Facebook page if you're interested. So organize a fundraiser. I mean, grassroots community giving is going to be our survival mechanism, not just for immigrant rights organizations, for all nonprofits. I mean, the administration drastically slashed any sort of aid or funding for grants, for health, for all sorts of things, which I'm sure is not news to any of us here. And unfortunately, that has impacted all of us in a very, very difficult way, because in addition to losing funding, for example, USCRI had to cut an entire department. They're a federal organization, so they're located all across the nation. They had to cut an entire department of like 20 people because of a loss of funding. And because of the loss of funding, now we're all competing for the same grants. Organizations who aren't even in the same sector are competing for the same grants. Grant groups that would normally fund us no longer want to have anything to do with us because we're kind of against the current administration's agenda. And CCSM is not alone. All local immigration nonprofits are experiencing this. So grassroots giving is going to be vital for all of us in the next couple of years. And that can look like either donating directly to a local organization, to a GoFundMe. It could be hosting a fundraiser. These are pictures of our donor organizer, David, and he has hosted like an insane number of donor events over the last year and a half. People will be like, can you come to my house and just talk to my friends and family and neighbors about the work that you're doing? Or we'll have businesses invite us to talk. So, you know, host a fundraiser, donate, or, you know, keep an eye out for families in need, because there are families affected locally who have started their own GoFundMes to help with legal fees and whatnot. So grassroots giving is going to be really, really important for all of us. And volunteer. I don't know if this is the last one, but volunteering is also just as important as donating, because burnout is real. There's tons of different ways that you can get involved. Again, there's that giant list of nonprofits locally that you can get involved with. You know, it can be accompaniment, it can be rapid response, but it could also be packing grocery boxes. It can be helping us organize a training, because I don't have time to do this in volunteering. Like, there's so many different ways for people to get involved in, you know, and it doesn't, again, have to just be immigrant rights organizations. It can be your local food bank, because so many of our community members that are directly impacted rely on food banks. They rely on, you know, local health services. So there's so many ways to get involved, and I cannot encourage folks enough to find something that fits for you and your interests and your background and your time, and just jump in and dive in. It really doesn't have to be big. It can, you know, be small as well. These are some of our volunteer opportunities. This is our, you know, from our food justice team. And then this is, we participate in the Hudson Winter Walk every year. And so some of our volunteers help table and give out churros and hot chocolate and raise money for us. So again, lots and lots of different ways to volunteer. Oh no, educate yourself and speak out. So I mean, it's really important to know what we're all talking about so that, again, when we see misinformation, we can immediately combat misinformation. And there is so much misinformation going on right now out in the world. And so being able to speak on that, even locally, knowing about what's happening locally, like the different legislation that's going on is really important. Capital District Border Watch hosted an awesome book talk by an author who wrote a really great book about the history of immigration and refugee and asylees in our country. So there's book talks that happen. There's I'm sure a ton of books online, but coming to talks like this, coming to talks that Capital District Border Watch hosts or RISE, being able to speak accurately on the reality that a lot of our immigrant community members face is really important. It helps them feel safe, it helps them feel comfortable. It can be hard. I know this from firsthand experience. Having discussions with your family about this is not easy, but it's important because these are people's lives, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of each other. So keep an eye on. I think Capital District Border Watch sends out an email similar to, I think, Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace. So if you want to get on like their email listserv, I think they have a website. You can go and do that too. Lots of ways to keep up to date on what's going on. There we go. This is our hotline for anybody who's in Columbia and Greene County. That's our hotline number. If you want to put that in your phone, you can, but the Capital Region Sanctuary Coalition is probably your closest network. But we do share it. We share information a lot. So if for some reason this is the only number in your phone, we will pass the information along to CRSC. So.
Thank you so much. A couple of things to say that whom I will more properly introduce. A couple of the bills that I was up in Albany today, and there was a Defend New York rally, and they discussed one of the three things they spoke about. They spoke about climate, they spoke about tax rich to fund a lot of this, but they also spoke about immigration and ICE, and one of the, a couple of the other laws to look up are dignity, not detention, the MELT Act, which is Fahey's Act to have masks removed, have proper identification, badges, and the ARA for access to legal representation, which is a really good segue because, I mean, Haley and Rio both mentioned the lack of legal representation for these people. So we have here, Theodore Hartman is a local attorney who is currently working to help individuals who have been targeted by ICE. Cheers. Thank you.
So I actually just got back from Buffalo. I represent people in the Capital District that have been put in removal proceedings. I also represent people who are in the criminal justice system who may have immigration consequences for what they're charged with. So I'm going to give you three quick examples of cases that I had without names that can kind of, I think, are illustrative of what's going on right now. The first case actually involves Columbia Sanctuary Movement. I had a 17-year-old Ecuadorian who I was representing in Catskill Town Court. He and I went to Catskill Town Court. He was sentenced for what he was charged with. And there were these two gentlemen that were inside the court, and they looked kind of out of place. But anyway, we walked out after the sentencing. We went into the street. I'm talking to my client, and then the next thing I know, my client's gone. And I look over my shoulder, and ICE had taken my client, and they were putting him in a van. Now, they didn't identify themselves as law enforcement. They didn't say, you're under arrest. They didn't say anything to us whatsoever. They just took a 17-year-old kid off the street and put him in the van. I didn't know if he had been kidnapped by a cartel. I didn't know if this was a prank, and I didn't know if they were ICE officers. Turns out it was ICE. And they took him to Malta, and they took him to Buffalo, and he was deported back to Ecuador. Meanwhile, his mother and his father are screaming, crying. They don't know what happened to their son. They don't know if he's been kidnapped, the people that were after them in Ecuador, or whatever. No idea. But this is the kind of treatment that a lot of my clients receive. So that's a 17-year-old kid, not treated with an ounce of humanity whatsoever. Now, Columbia Sanctuary Movement, I posted about this and they contacted me and they're like, well, we need the video of this. I was like, I don't know how to get the video of this, but I think, I don't know if you guys heard about this, but I think that they're trying to get the video of what happened with my client. But I think that brings up an important point about documentation, right? You know, like, how do we know what happened during, for example, the Holocaust? We know because somebody, Anne Frank, whoever, documented things. And when you're up against a system like this that you're not going to beat most of the time, the least you can do is document what happened. Because you never know what kind of international court or federal court you're going to have to tell this story to. So that kind of segues into my next client, who's in Rensselaer County. Now, in Rensselaer County, basically you have ICE officers just pulling over people of color left and right, determining whether or not they're a citizen. If they are a citizen, they let them go. If they aren't a citizen, they detain them immediately. This happened to a Pakistani client of mine who was going to all his court dates in Buffalo. He's got a strong asylum case. His mother was raped by a man when she was 12 years old, and that was the father, and then he was trying to claim asylum from Pakistan based on some of his fear of this man. No criminal record whatsoever, and you'll find that over 70% of the arrests now are people with no criminal record whatsoever. And so, what's going on? Why is there this uptick in incarcerations? And it has a lot to do with the fact that the group, the GEO group, who runs the private prisons where the immigrants go, is a private corporation. Who do they give a lot of money to? Turns out the Trump administration. And so Stephen Miller recently was screaming at his ICE underlings and saying something like, you guys aren't making enough arrests. We don't have enough people in jail. Which I thought was interesting, because they're not saying necessarily that it's the deportations we need to make. It's they weren't putting enough people in prison. Because that's big business for these people. Because we're sold on this thing where it's like, all right, well, there's these criminals, and we have to put them in jail, and then we have to deport them. That's not what's going on. What's going on is non-criminal immigrants are being put in for-profit prisons. The United States of America has the highest per capita incarceration rate in the entire world. I was a public defender in a state in Louisiana that had the highest in the entire nation. That's how I first started getting involved in immigration, because a lot of my clients had ICE holds. And so there's definitely this motivation to not only deport people, and primarily people of color, but first incarcerate them for a long period of time. So I have another client, Brazilian boy who was 18 years old. He applied for something called Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. We went to the Saratoga Family Court. He won. The judge, the family court judge, welcomed him to the United States and said, I think you're going to be a great American one day. And you've got what it takes. You're smart, you help your mom, you do all these nice things. And he was going to take that court order from family court and send it to USCIS, and he was going to live happily ever after the United States. Well, one night he's driving, he's in the car with another immigrant, and they decided they're going to detain both of them. So they detained my client, even though he had an approved SIJ application, put him in jail, and the immigration court was like, well, if you don't like it, go to the federal court. I'm like, okay. So we went to the federal court. Family had to find thousands of dollars to pay a federal lawyer to do a habeas corpus petition. This guy loses like 30 pounds in jail in Batavia. He starts to go kind of nuts in jail. He's having a hard time. He's an 18-year-old kid. And before that, this kid with no criminal record, who has status in the United States, essentially, is housed in Montgomery County Jail with people that are charged with felonies. So this kid, who has no experience whatsoever with the criminal justice system, is first imprisoned in a jail for people who are waiting felonies, and then he's sent to Buffalo to be in jail for 2 months Finally, we got him out and he came back. And he's back in Mechanicville, is where he lives. But I think that those cases are illustrative of what's going on. And what's going on is they're in a huge rush to incarcerate as many people as possible. I got a text message while we were waiting. I'll read it to you. I won't tell you the client, but I'll tell you what it says. It says, it's a letter. It says that he needs to report to Malta. And it says, hello lawyer, please tell me what this means. I'm really scared. Please answer me. What should I do? I feel like everything just fell on top of me. Now, I don't know. The reality is, he may have a great case in immigration court, but if he shows up in Malta, their instinct is to just incarcerate people and ask questions later. And so what they'll do is they'll just detain him, and they're like, if you don't like it, go to the federal court. Federal courts are overloaded now with these habeas petitions. I got admitted to the Western District yesterday, and the judge grilled me on these habeas petitions for like 20 minutes before letting me into the Western District of New York because they're sick of getting them and they think they're all frivolous and they don't want to deal with them. Well, tough. We're going to file them, we're going to file lots of them, we're trying to get as many people out as possible. So, in the last presentation they talked about the importance of misinformation. There's a tremendous amount of misinformation about who is being detained. And I think it's really important to know about what the real motivations behind detention are, who is being detained, why they're being detained, and what the impact on those people is. And I think that's really important. And as I said before, document everything. Now, I don't know if you guys do this, but I've had 3 clients bond out in the last 2 weeks, and they all used, I'm not sure if it's the same organization, but there are organizations that provide bond money. So like, I got a bond out of Elizabeth, New Jersey for $15,000. Clients don't have $15,000. So an organization put up the 15 grand, which they will get back. I don't know if you ever have people calling you.
We do. I don't know. I think that would fall under our mutual aid, but I don't know if we have that level of bond money. But I think we help source it from other areas. We help connect people who need it.
I think it's best to try to go to these organizations and let them deal with it. Raising money for bond is kind of messy, in my experience, and I try to shy away from it. The other thing is I wanted to mention the stuff about posting about raids. I'd also be extremely careful about that. I don't think there's anything wrong about saying there's a raid in Cohoes, but if you write something like avoid Cohoes tonight because there's going to be a raid, I don't know. This administration will interpret everything the wrong way. I don't trust them. So I'm saying that, like, they will accuse you of evading ICE for the smallest things. They accused the church in Albany where ICE showed up and they sent people through another exit. And ICE was trying to say that they were, trying to facilitate, the escape of immigrants. And they had no idea what these people's status was. They just happened to be all Somalian, right? So that's it. If any of you have any questions you want to ask me privately, that's cool. I guess we'll have a quick question and answer now with everybody.
So we have like a half an hour for Q&A. Do you want to have a seat, Ted?
Oh, sure.
Right, no, right here. No. Have a seat. I'll take the questions, I'll repeat the questions. This young man back here had his hand up first.
Yep, I was just curious. I regularly run into people out in Rensselaer County who are working in the informal economy and don't speak English well. And I would like to be able to hand them a palm card or some basic information, what to do if you get stopped by ICE. Or I'd like to know that. I'm embarrassed that even though I read the papers and really follow all this stuff, if somebody called me and said, my mom just got arrested, I don't know what to do, I wouldn't know what to tell them. So what is this? What is the first grain of information that somebody needs to help a neighbor who's in trouble with ICE? Or with the local police, whatever it is.
What I would say is get some of these red cards. You can find them from a lot of the different organizations. NYIC, you can order them. They come in like the hundreds.
What is NYIC?
New York Immigration Coalition. They're a statewide organization made up of smaller organizations. They do a lot of lobbying, provide direct services. So I would say check with any of the local nonprofits. Try to get a red card. Sometimes they're not always red. I think depending on the language, they change the color a little bit. At least NYIC does. And you can hand them out to folks. I would also make sure that they're aware of whatever your local emergency hotline number is. If it's Rensselaer, I think there's a Troy group. So you could try to get them to put it in their phone. That's actually one of the bigger issues that we've been experiencing with our rapid response is that community members won't actually call us. They'll call somebody they know who will then call us. A lot of times, even if it's people that work with us, it's just not the fastest way. So we actually spent a day calling community members and saying, please put this number in your phone so that it's a faster response time. So that would be my recommendation. Find an org that will get you some red cards for whatever language you need, pass them out, and also just make them aware of the different organizations that can assist them if they were to need it. And you can, also make yourself aware, maybe print out a list or something, however you find helpful for you.
Just want to add really quick, so has anyone heard of the SALUTE acronym for ICE reporting? Okay, so we have cool. So basically it's a useful tool for, if and when you are reporting something, obviously with the permission of, directly impacted people who may be supporting in that moment. Or, you're guiding them toward a resource like CCSM or CRSC, and, encouraging them if they'd like to, to connect or see what kind of support they could receive, all that kind of good stuff. So I just want to read this out really quick. So the acronym is SALUTE, and you can utilize this as a way to kind of know what's going on and what you can share back. So it's a little bit more of a specific report back, So SALUTE, S, size. How many agents or officers are present? A, activity. What specifically are the agents doing? If someone's detained, or do you know their A number or date of birth? No, that's kind of an additional piece. Don't worry about that too much right now. But an A number is basically everyone who is in the immigration system in some form or fashion has a number that they're assigned, and if that person does need to be located after the fact, you can utilize that to find the person in the system. Okay, let's see, L, location. So you want to give, an exact address or an intersection. That can be really helpful, especially for rapid response. If there's a follow-up, and just to be aware of where there might be activity, kind of tracing patterns and stuff, U could be uniforms or units. So what are you seeing on people's clothing? Do you see ICE? Do you see ERO? Do you see, HSI? All these acronyms, FBI, do you see that's local police? Do you see it's multiple agencies? Take a note of what people are wearing. Are they wearing plain clothes? Just everyday wear, Take a note of all that stuff, because that can help kind of piece together things. T, time, what time? Try to be as specific as possible. And equipment. E, equipment. What kind of equipment did the officers have on them? The flexi cuffs, door breakers, and just to quickly circle back to uniform or units, in addition to seeing what people are wearing, try to take note of how many agents are present in the space, and how many vehicles. All of that helps paint a picture that's very specific and can help us get an idea of what the community members navigating, and also larger trends throughout the area.
This will be in our training on the 16th for anybody who doesn't know Salute. We're having it in English and in Spanish, so highly recommend attending.
Where is that?
Virtual, it's online, so I can connect you with a link.
One thing I tell my clients to do is I tell them to ask for their names, ask for what organization they're in, ask for their badge numbers, ask for any kind of identification you can, because I really want to know who's doing what. Like, for example, in my case in Rensselaer County with the Pakistani, I want to know, did the Rensselaer County Sheriff's Office pull my client over and then call ICE? Or is it a situation where ICE is just pulling people over randomly if they look a certain way? Those are important things to know. So, especially when you want to get into these 287G agreements and whether or not people are violating them. Who's doing what as part of Salute, but even go more detailed. There's nothing wrong with a client or a respondent, defendant saying, what is your name? You know, what is your name, what's your organization, what's your badge number? Regardless of whether it's ICE, ERO, sheriffs, police officers, they could say, I'm not going to tell you, but there's no harm.
Do you or any of the volunteers ever been bugged by ICE itself?
What?
You are actually working against the ICE.
Working against.
Do you ever been
Have you ever been
harassed
stopped?
by those guys?
Every day. Every day I go to Malta, and I have to talk to them, and they don't, like, I'm gonna have a client that's gonna be detained. They'll tell me that they don't want to talk to me, it's none of my business, that I should just leave. You know, go to immigration court, get yelled at by judges, get yelled at by ICE. I mean, it's a very adversarial system. So I would say every single day I have some sort of negative interaction. I try to be nice, try to be polite, but, you know, I don't know about you guys.
I haven't, but my supervisor has, and I've been in a situation with him when he was responding to a raid in Greene County, as sometimes our rapid response teams do, he followed the agent just to see if they were going to go to another location and they could keep more people safe. And the agent, I think, actually called the state troopers and reported him for driving erratically. And so when I came, I was just driving to work because I'm actually not part of our rapid response team, so I had no idea any of this was going on. I was just driving to work and saw him pulled over on the side of the road. He had 3 or 4 ICE agents behind him, 2 local sheriffs, and a state trooper. So I turned right around and started filming, but he has experienced quite a bit.
I haven't, thankfully. So yeah, I haven't, and hopefully I won't be, but we'll see. You know, who knows? I would say, kind of quick little asterisk. If you can, also film. I think that's a really useful, like, ally move. If you're somewhere, it's like film what's happening. You know what I mean? And do it as safely as possible. Definitely keep your distance. If you're asked to move back, like, comply with that. You can even film yourself, like, walking back, your feet walking back, to demonstrate that you are. But the more documentation that you can safely, you know, collect, the better.
Okay, there's a woman, yes, I know,
Okay, I have like a very particular question about the warrants. What the ICE warrants are supposed to be?
What the ICE warrants are supposed to be and what an actual legal warrant is to arrest someone.
I've seen like one ICE warrant. Typically, right, like in a criminal defense environment, you'll have like a warrant to search a premises or a warrant looking for somebody specific.
Right.
I guess the ICE warrants are supposed to be very specific about what they're looking for in a place, but I think they have to be signed. I mean, I've only seen one was signed by a federal judge. So like,
Okay.
So like, how much access are these people gonna have to federal judges to just get warrants? It's not like a county judge, you can kind of walk into chambers and say, "I sign this."
Right,
I think they're rare.
right.
Like, have you guys seen any?
I don't think we've seen any federal warrants, but they do use their, their DHS warrants. There's some administrative ones, but they're never signed by a judge.
Right.
Okay,
So I don't really even know, like,
yeah,
of course, who would decide whether or not enforceable? A federal
Right.
court.
right.
But like, I don't think they're enforceable. Like, if DHS says, "Hey, we think that we should be able to come into your premises,"
Right,
I say no.
Right.
You know, like,
okay,
get a federal judge to sign this.
right. Where's the warrant?
That's what I would say.
Right, okay. 'Cause
You're an
then-
agency trying to arrest me. Why would I trust the fact that it's like signing your own?
Right, right. It's like they'll say, okay, well, we have a warrant to arrest you, and you say, show me the warrant.
Right.
If I could just add to what you're saying, I think
Sure.
one of
The important things that comes with a lot of the Know Your Rights trainings is being able to identify and differentiate between what a federal judicial warrant is, one that would typically be signed by a judge, as you said, like a search and seizure or an arrest warrant, and then one that ICE uses, which you hear an ICE warrant, civil administrative, their internal processing documents that like, I mean, honestly make no sense, but they will use them and try to trick people into thinking that that's a real warrant, and that's when you're saying it's not enforceable. So being able to identify and differentiate between what they're more likely to hand you opposed to what is legal is also very, very helpful.
And also, aren't churches supposed to be sanctuaries?
not anymore.
Not anymore? No. Okay. Schools are not sanctuaries?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Actually, just to go real quick on this, on the New York for All Act, and I'm going to leave this open on the table. One of the things that would be placed where public places like churches would be protected.
Okay.
So Hochul's bill does nothing, but this bill, the New York for All, would.
Just a quick
Steve,
follow-up.
go ahead.
Quick follow-up. For people who do call your emergency number, if they need pro bono help, can they get it, or is that something to worry about beforehand? Not you personally, but in general, people coming through the sanctuary movement, do they have access to pro bono legal help?
Like, does legal aid help out? No.
So we mainly do a lot of referrals because when we did have our DOJ reps, they weren't fully accredited, and only until the very end could they represent people. So we are trying to organize like a committee of legal volunteers who are lawyers that can assist, and we have a very long referral list. We do refer people to legal aid, we refer people to prisoners' legal services, but anywhere you go, which I'm sure you can attest to, there's very little capacity, and very few people are able to take on new cases. But that is something that our rapid response team does try to do. I would say if you have an individual and they've been detained, but it is not like an emergency, it's not an ongoing situation, call our regular office line, which is on our website, because we try to keep the hotline for ongoing active rates. So we do have a list that we can share and refer people to.
I'm
But I
mostly
won't say
thinking of
it's
an
easy.
emergency situation. If I get a call from my friend's son saying my mom was just arrested, freaked out, they don't know what to do. Call the hotline number.
Call the hotline. In that case, I would say call the hotline, because if it just happened, we can get information about what happened to be able to record it and potentially use it later on. And we can also try to help with immediate support services like finding where she went. But that would be my recommendation, would be to call the hotline if it was immediate.
I think what the family's going to want to do is, if someone gets arrested, they're going to track where this person's going. And there'll be sometimes there's like a 24 to 48 hour period where you don't hear anything. Like I've had probably 5 people call me today and say that so-and-so's been detained, where I don't know where they are. If they have an alien number, they can go on ICE Locator online, use the alien number, and that'll tell them where they are. It's called ICE Locator. And if they have an alien number, now, an alien number is only going to be on someone who's already been in the system. They would have an alien number. Someone who's never been in the system is not going to have an alien number. Go on ICE Locator and say they're in Basile or they're in Batavia. First, here in Albany, they'll go to Malta first. Then they will go to Montgomery County for a day or two, and then they will go to Batavia, normally. And what they're doing, though, is they're sending a lot of people to Louisiana because Louisiana's in the Fifth Circuit, so it's better case law for them. So they're strategic about where they're sending people. They send a lot of people down to Shannon in Pennsylvania. Most of my clients are in Batavia, some of them are in Shannon, some get sent down to Louisiana.
So I have a kind of a question that's, you mentioned like the prison system using these people, so it's like institutional slavery. How much of that is going on with these people?
I don't know how much, like if you go down to Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, you'll see the chain gangs literally on the road. And I've been to Angola in Louisiana, and I've seen people literally picking cotton, which is a disturbing scene, right? Are these people doing slave labor inside the immigration jails? No. Their value is their presence, being there. They get paid for it. So you have a situation where you have public money is being used to round up individuals, and the federal government, the federal government pays the GEO group to house these people for them. So they don't bear the costs of collecting the people, but they certainly bear they get the profits of the beds. And that's why Stephen Miller is so mad at ICE. You're not arrested. He said you have to arrest 3,000 people a day, or you're gone. There's quotas because they need to fill those spots.
Yes.
So how much are these per bed? How much are these prisons making per bed, per head a day?
I don't know. I'm sure it's Google, but I don't really know. I know it's a lot. I know the GEO stock goes up. Google the GEO group. When you walk in, it's an odd thing. You walk into the prison, and instead of seeing beautiful faces of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, what you see is the board of directors of the GEO group. And all these guys, they're tan, white teeth, and they're all dressed up, and you're like, why am I looking at the board of directors of a corporation when I'm walking into a prison? That's what it is.
So just to talk about some of the
legislation and activism that we do, ICE is trying to get more detention centers locally, and so one of the things that we've done with, again, tons of other organizations from, at this point, I think it was across the state. We went down to, I think it was Orange County was the one that they were trying to buy recently. And so we got a whole bunch of people. They drove all the way down there and they protested it. And then I think they decided to not buy the location in Orange County. So they're looking for more detention facilities. They're looking to buy more spaces to hold more people. And so another thing that you can do is get involved in some of these protests and make it either impossible or very, very difficult for them to buy these sorts of properties locally. I mean, it's not going to prevent them from doing it across the country, but at least we can kind of try to keep it from happening here.
Yes. Just a really quick question about the right to know cards. I stop at Period Pantry in Albany, on Waterloo Avenue, right outside the food co-op, and I typically stop right to know cards, but they go fast. And so you mentioned the New York location, and you could get them in the hundreds. Is there a fee?
Are they charging now?
I paid for like 100.
Yeah, so it's the New York Immigration Coalition. Definitely go to their website. It used to be that only organizations and nonprofits could get them, so I don't know if that's still the case, if you have to be an affiliate of a group or whatnot, but Laura, you said you had to pay for some?
I did have to pay, but I might not have done it through, I followed all the links.
Yeah.
I paid, I mean, I got 100, it wasn't a lot of money.
Yeah, they come in packs of 100. I don't think they'll give you anything less than 100. But definitely check out the New York Immigration Coalition website. We make our own, which I would not, I mean, we try to hand them out to everybody who comes in as a client. And when people ask if we have the capacity to get them to them, we try because it has our emergency number on it. But it's mostly myself and some volunteers laminating and printing and cutting. We don't have the machinery and mechanisms that New York Immigration Coalition has at their disposal. So I would say they're probably still the fastest.
It looks like you can download it if you just want one copy. You can just download it and print it or print your own.
Oh, I want a lot. For the period, the menstrual period pantries, we put them in there, and they go really fast.
But that's a great idea to put them in different places.
Yeah, there's food refrigerators all over Albany. I
Yeah.
don't know if we're doing it with the food refrigerators, but I hope so.
I mean, anywhere that you can put them that people will get them. I was at the doctor's office and they had some information on Know Your Rights taped to the back of the bathroom doors. So really everywhere, as much information as we can get people is great.
Can I just ask another really quick question? This may be too granular, and if it is, just I'll shut up. So I was recently in a situation, I was recently on Facebook, and I always kind of look for what's going on with us. And somebody posted something. One restaurant owner posted that there had been an ice raid. This is like 3 weeks ago Sunday in Troy on 3rd Street of another restaurant owner, the Mexican restaurant on 3rd Street.
He's my client, he got out today.
So it was a fact.
Yep.
So I called okay, because I called the OB guy and I was like, I'm not seeing it on Border Watch, I'm not seeing it anywhere else. Is it real? Are you sure?
He posted a bond today.
Okay, so it did happen.
He ran a, it's the same person. He was a restaurant, or he ran a mini mart, and he ran a Mexican restaurant on 3rd Street in Troy. No criminal record whatsoever. People loved the restaurant.
There's a lot of support.
There was a lot of support. He got a $15,000 bond. An organization put the money up. He got it today.
Like Rio mentioned though at the beginning, like CRSC counted 600 raids since last year, but again, that's what they know of. Like the number could be way higher. But yeah, the SALUTE acronym is also a good way to identify misinformation online. So if you see somebody posting something and it doesn't have most of, I guess, what SALUTE is, it might be misinformation, and could bring up some red flags. But
Yeah, the guy I talked to on the phone, I looked an hour later, he had taken it down. So then I took my post down on Facebook, thinking, But, okay.
I would say if you're curious, you could still call some of the local immigration groups. I know that when there's reported raids happening, people do call our office line to ask, and our office manager, who typically answers, is part of the rapid response team. So if there's something confirmed, I think typically he tells folks, but that wouldn't necessarily work for up here, but you might be able to call a number or ask.
Most of the raids are still early morning.
Yeah, typically they happen early in the morning as people are going to work, or late when people are leaving work.
Which also, goes to who are the people that they are, people that are working. Right? These are not people. They're not going to, a meth den or someplace, a casino. They're taking these people up to work. They're doing work.
So I think it's really important.
Any other questions right now? Well, Trudy told me I have to tell you, I am running for Assembly in Assembly District 102. I did it, I told you, enough said. Unless you live in Assembly District 102, then I want your signature tonight. But I don't think there's anybody here. It said, the hill towns, Selkirk, Ravenna, it's it in Albany County. So, but the hill, Queens,
Congratulations.
Democrat Party.
Democratic Party. so there's a primary. Anyway, I did that. Now, are there any other questions for other people, for these people here? I have a quick, and there was, I'm 99% sure it was AI. There was a thing on Facebook about, you know, these police down in New York City grabbing an ICE guy and taking off his hat and all that.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And I'm not, I was like, well, that's got to be AI. But how much support do you see from law enforcement, from like local police and sheriffs for ICE versus non-support? I mean, is there like it depends upon the community?
They're the same people. I think the support for ICE among local law enforcement, sheriffs, police is pretty high. In fact, like, I think that's where we come in. I think we have to put pressure on our local police departments. There's the budget for the police department across the street is much more than this library here. Go over there and ask them, what are you doing to protect us against ICE? What are you doing to protect the people of this community against ICE? Because it's not like American citizens can't get killed by these people, because it happened twice in Minnesota, right? So we didn't know how you are going to protect us from them. And I think that puts them in an unusual situation, because usually they feel like culturally, these are their buddies, these are their friends. But I think it's incumbent upon us to sort of pit them against each other, because the police do work for us to protect us from anybody, not just, you know, in their minds it might be like African Americans coming in from Albany. That's who we have to protect. No, you have to protect us also, you know, from the people that are from all walks of life, whether it's ICE or somebody else.
Yeah, even retired folks, like a relative of mine on Facebook who's a retired parole officer, and I'm sure he's not the only one retired. I'm sure he's tipping them, because that's what he loves to do. And so, you know.
Yeah, I've heard actually that a lot of their pickups have come from tips in cases. And just to speak, I completely agree with everything that was just said, but talking about our experience in Columbia and Green, I don't think we have seen yet collaboration. We have not seen the collaboration between our local law enforcement, but we have seen it with state troopers. Unfortunately, we had somebody who had requested assistance for a domestic violence case, and the first people that the state troopers called was ICE, and it was like a mom and her infant. So it's happening, and it's, I think, also just not a matter of, like, if some of this legislation does not get passed, it's a matter of if, or when, rather than if it happens, because, yeah, it is, it's happening.
Yes, who gets it?
Who owns these detention centers? Who manages them? And are there any standards that they have to meet? I mean, I just read such horrible things about what's happening in them, and, you know, people dying, and, you know, health emergencies, and
So a lot of them, I don't know all of them, but a lot of them, it's like the federal government has a contract with a local prison, like Rensselaer County. They'll have a contract with a local prison. But then, in addition to that, the GEO Group has their own prisons that they manage themselves, and they're completely private. I mean, there's basic law, federal law about the treatment of their, I mean, they can't kill people, they can't do other things, but in terms of like what their standards are, it's pretty much established by themselves.
How are we selling GEO groups?
GEO.
GEO. And I know years ago, back in the day when I was a kid, just graduated from high school or right in college, was working actually as a probation officer for 3 years. Way back when, I can remember, you know, going into jails and having to do some work for corrections officers talking about taking in federal prisoners temporarily, and taking in people from other counties because they get a much higher rate. Like if you're borders is the term. This was back in the 80s. So it was very desirable to have, and I don't even know if it was legal for a county jail to take in a federal person, but that's a whole other story. But I know it was very lucrative back then. These were not private facilities, so we really know.
I've had criminal federal clients in Montgomery County Jail that feds have a contract with the county jail because they need to be somewhere near Syracuse, and then ICE has a separate one. They had one with Albany County. I don't know if Apple still has that.
Trudy, you had a question?
More of a comment. So I'm thinking that the question we should also be asking is, doesn't it seem like they're going to run out of immigrants sooner or later? And then who are they going to put in these jails? Because doesn't it seem like fewer and fewer immigrants are coming into the country? And
There's still like 15 million undocumented.
15 million?
I don't know.
10 or 15 million, so they got a lot. I mean, you're talking about, Miller's math, they're not arresting 3,000 a day. 15 people, what's happening is the line keeps on getting pushed, right? So at first it's the criminals, then it's, people without any status, then it's people who, there's lots of people that have approved applications that are getting up, they just keep on moving the goalpost until they get rid of everyone. And, a lot of it's just ethnic cleansing. And so they're trying to keep on making the, to answer your question, I don't think there's any shortage for the next 10 years.
But, so the goal is to make the country white? What is the goal?
White.
I mean, they've already started arresting or detaining U.S. citizens who are people of color. So they're not even going to wait until they've run out of people that don't have a citizenship status.
Well, if we can do, I'm sorry. I got the mic. So if we can, remember the Black Lives Movement. The woman was driving to her new job down in Texas, and the sheriff killed her. It's become where it's white people too. They've I don't know what you want to call it, but but the Black Lives Movement, they were doing it then, and now it's just getting more and more. They got away with it then, and I don't know. Maybe I'm making an out of the park kind of comment, but
no, I think you're right in the sense that the United States again has the highest incarceration rate in the entire world. So they've got the infrastructure to incarcerate. And they use so now they're, in Louisiana or Mississippi, Alabama, we have incredibly high rates of African Americans that are detained there. So now we're perfectly prepared and ready to do it to someone else. And right now, it's the next person's turn is largely Latino respondents in immigration court. And also, I'll point out that it's a really bizarre remedy to incarcerate someone for being restricted from a civil privilege. In other words, nowhere else in our lives are we denied a privilege and we go to jail for it. Except in criminal defense, where if you break a law, you go to jail for that. But there's all immigration is a civil privilege to vote, other benefits, you get loans, scholarships, things like that. You're just being restricted from the privilege. So being restricted from the privilege shouldn't involve you going into a cage.
I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about immigration, actually. I think so, at least, is that, you see online and a lot of the rhetoric is the drug dealers and these criminals and blah, 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 and they're breaking the law by crossing the border. And it's not with the exception of reentry, it's not a criminal offense. And being able to seek refuge and being able to seek asylum is an international human right. So I think that's one of the
biggest misconceptions that, or rhetorics that people will often throw out there is that it's illegal immigration. There's not, immigration isn't illegal.
People haven't looked, those are usually people who haven't looked at the definition, like what is asylum? You know what I mean? They just clump it all together and just say, illegals.
And that's why it's important to educate, you know, on the history, because the history of our refugee system and our asylee system is actually quite young. Like it's not really that old of a system, and it was designed to not work. There's a really great book about it out there that I would highly recommend, but it's not that old of a system.
And what's the name of the book?
I would have to look it up again.
Just to add really quick, yeah, I appreciate both of your guys' points, and I think like this moment that we're witnessing, I mean, I feel like the administration is very like, admittedly, like, even if it's through innuendo, sometimes like a white nationalist oriented kind of vibe, for lack of a better term, or agenda. So I think what we're seeing now, it's so true, like our country is, from its inception, right, it's like primed for this kind of thing, and primed for othering, and primed for racial discrimination and violence. And I think we see that even within the immigrant community, you know. It's like if, you know, black and brown people who are immigrants are going to be impacted by this more than white immigrants would be, you know. And I think by proxy, and as it ties to the larger fabric of the US, right, it's like black and brown people, even if they're not immigrants, maybe they're first gen, second gen, maybe they've been here for like generations on generations, you know, as long as many other white people have been, you know. So I think like what we're seeing now, it is, unfortunately, it is so tied to that agenda piece, and, you know, and the money and the power, you know. So that's why I think also, just to say, I think it's so cool that everyone came out tonight, you know, because I don't want to assume how anyone identifies, but I get the sense most of us probably identify racially as white potentially, or that's part of our identity, you know. And I think it's really important we're having these conversations, you know, like it's super important, you know. It is so common, right, in white spaces where we don't talk about this, or it's so contentious, whatever, but we have to, because it's something that at the end of the day, like, our community really has to put forth effort into fixing, and like remembering that all of our liberation is really bound onto each other's, you know?
The book is Everyone Who Is Here Is Gone.
Everyone who is.
The book is titled "Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here" by Jonathan Blitzer.
Yeah, I really have to close this up, but I mean, if it's an important point.
I'll just leave you with this, and if anyone's saying that like this idea that it's white ethnic cleansing is going, this administration just started a new refugee program for South African white farmers.
South African what?
South African, the Afrikaners. So they're bringing in refugees who are white from South Africa and saying that they're victims of racial discrimination in South Africa, which is, you know, ridiculous. So that's just the last point.
It crossed my mind too. I want to thank Haley and Rio and Ted for a great presentation. I'm really glad you introduced yourself to come here, Ted. I think these people, I think Rio and Rio just said something about power and money, and on everything, it's power and money, but only power and money for certain people. So thank you very much. We have to be out of here now. Thank you.